everyone, and welcome to a special edition of the Slash Filmcast interview. My name is David Chen, and today I'll be speaking with director James Cameron. Over the past few decades, James Cameron has crafted some of the best action and science fiction movies of all time, including Aliens, Terminator 2, True Lies, and The Abyss. In 1997, James Cameron directed Titanic, which won the Best Picture Oscar and won him the Best Director Oscar. That film went on to gross more than $1.8 billion worldwide, making it the highest-grossing film of all time. His newest film, Avatar, follows the story of a Marine who travels to a distant world and is able to inhabit a new body to interact with the natives. In my review of Avatar, I wrote the following. I found what I was looking for in Avatar, a sense of wonderment at the novel and a feeling that what I was seeing was the beginning of something exciting in the world of cinema. There were sequences of such intensity that they literally got my heart pumping, and scenes and moments of such beauty in this film that my inner child squealed with glee at seeing them on screen. If you're looking for an amazing time at the movie theater, there's more than enough here to thrill you, move you, entertain, and even provoke you. Avatar is out in theaters today. Mr. Cameron, thanks so much for speaking with us today at slashfilm.com. So, first of all, congratulations on the release of Avatar. It's quite epic and very well done, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, we are. We're actually coming out as we speak in some of the international territories.
So my first question is about technology.
Yeah.
Many of your movies.
There's a shock.
Well, not in the way that you think.
Okay.
Many of your movies are about how technology is evil or bad in some way. In Avatar, for example, we're meant to admire the simplicity of the Na'vi's way of life. And in the Terminator films, you basically created one of the most evil computers ever.
Sure.
Skynet
and in
is
Titanic, the technology lets us down. And
right, exactly.
Sort of
but at the same time, you use cutting-edge filmmaking technology that's like the best in the world, and you helped invent the camera technology that you're using.
So how do I account for the apparent paradox?
Yeah. Can you explain your own personal
relationship? To me,
relationship?
it's not paradoxical. It's not even meant to be ironic. For me, film is a technical medium, and you can use a technical medium to celebrate something that's purely natural. I think you can use the most cutting edge technology available, which we did, to make a film that basically celebrates the inventiveness of nature, which we did. But, for me, technology in and of itself is not evil, but there's a great potential for evil in the human misapplication of technology. And so, you'll see, in my movies thematically connected, kind of dehumanization, the Terminators, which are basically a weapon system, inappropriate use of military force, which uses advanced weaponry. And yet, at the same time, you'll see technology used to save people. Sigourney's Ripley character in Aliens saves herself with this power loader that's sitting sort of this servo exoskeleton that's just sort of sitting there, and that she happens to know how to use. So it's really about people and the sort of the moral and ethical choices associated with their use of technology. So in Avatar, they're mining for unobtainium. Why? Because they need unobtainium to solve an energy crisis on Earth, even though that's not specifically spelled out in the movie. But they need it for some technological thing. And they're getting it because they're making choices which are unethical and amoral, essentially, about how they're going to interact with the natural world and the indigenous culture on Pandora. So it's really just asking people to be accountable, and accountable in their use of technology.
Right, and I guess
that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess your use of technology in movie making is one of the good uses, you'd say.
I would look at it that way. Yes, we're the good guys.
You've written a couple of films that have some pretty significant environmental themes. I'm thinking of The Abyss, came out in 1989, and you wrote Avatar in the 1990s.
Yeah.
Can you talk about why that was an influence in your filmmaking and whether or not that's changed in the last 10 years?
Well, it's a big influence in my life in general, being a sort of child of the 60s and sort of, coming to that point in the development of your cognitive processes, as a teenager in the late 60s and the early 70s, which is the time of the birth of the environmental movement. That was a big deal for me. And it's always been a big deal through my life, even though I haven't really been an activist per se until more recently. And then with my, kind of relationship with the ocean and seeing the devastation of the coral reefs and so on by all kinds of human activities, and now with climate change pretty much dooming the coral reef habitats of the world over the next 50 years, which not enough people are talking about. I do feel a sense of outrage, and a sense that as an artist, it's kind of my responsibility to create a warning, remind people, and people need to be reminded from every direction. If they're going to see it, maybe they want to go to a film and have it just be pure entertainment and not have to think about it or not have to feel guilty. I'm not trying to make people feel guilty. I just want them to internalize a sense of respect and a sense of taking responsibility for their role in the stewardship of the earth, and I think this film can do that by creating an emotional reaction to the stuff you already know. This film's not here to teach, it's not here to preach, but I think it does give you an emotional context for the information that you already have, and maybe that emotional response breaks through a little bit of the kind of denial defenses that we build up. Oh, I can't make a difference. It's not my problem. It doesn't affect me. It affects other people. What's a few degrees of temperature rise? What's, et cetera, whatever the justifications,
So I guess, that's another question, which is like, what is the thing that you want people to take away from this film, other than that, 3D is awesome and action is cool?
Well, I think, number one, I had a great time in a movie theater. That's the thing they should take away. I got my $15 worth. That kicked ass. My mind is blown. That's goal number one. Goal number two is, my emotions are still working because I cried because I felt something. And that's goal number two. And then goal number three would be, what was I crying about again? Oh yeah, boy, when that tree fell, or whatever it is. A slight shift in perception, if that's possible.
Right.
And the thing is, you can't move people away from their belief system. So, if you have somebody who doesn't believe that the environmental crisis or the energy crisis or whatever it is, or wars that are created unjustly because of our energy requirements or whatever, if they don't believe that that's the way the world really is, they're not going to change their minds. They may still have fun in the movie, but they're not going to change their minds. If somebody does believe that, or is looking for an answer, trying to figure it out, this may influence them because of that sense of outrage that is produced by moments in this film.
Right. Well, speaking
and maybe that's optimistic. Maybe it doesn't work that way. But if a film is successful and becomes a part of the zeitgeist, and there's a feeling that it's good to believe this way, and it's good to have that sense of responsibility, people will still rail against it, but maybe it does create a little bit of movement. And our culture evolves through all of its various influences, and major films, major TV shows, celebrities, whatever. If you hear it enough times, it does start to generate an influence.
Right. I mean, I spend a lot of my time writing and thinking about movies, so I would hope that, I feel the same way. But speaking about having a good time in the movie theater, a lot of science fiction movies have come out in the last decade or so, since you made Titanic. And we at Slash Film, we love movies, and I'd love to hear what you kind of think of some of these movies. And, obviously it's a lot of movies, so let's just say...
Well, The Matrix was fucking brilliant.
How did you know I was going to ask?
Fucking brilliant. Wasn't so crazy about the sequels, although there's some great visuals in the two follow-up films. But I thought The Matrix was a really seminal work, and it was brilliant because it just inverted the whole paradigm of the sort of virtual world concept.
Did you have a chance to see District 9 or Transformers?
Yeah. District 9 is I did I did this film called Alien Nation. I sort of ghost wrote it. It was produced by my wife at the time, Gail Hurd.
Right.
And District 9 obviously borrows pretty heavily from the ideas of Alien Nation, but then goes much farther and almost in the way that Avatar does, asks you to view. You come into the film with one perspective on the aliens, that they're hostile and they're kind of in our way, and we've got to deal with them and get them out of the way, and then you wind up with being very, very sympathetic to them toward the end. And in a way, it's a real triumph, because the aliens are so unsympathetic looking. They really did go to, not to the extreme, but they really did go pretty far in making them alien, truly alien to us, where the emotional affect is missing completely from them physiologically. That's almost the opposite choice that I made on Avatar, where I wanted them, because I didn't feel I was doing truly a science fiction film. I think of it more as a fantasy, a science fiction fantasy, if you will, kind of located halfway between fantasy and science fiction. And so for me, it was important that my so-called alien people be completely relatable, because they're my main characters. You're not having a continuous human viewpoint to interpret them through. You go live with them, and you essentially become one of them, and they have to make sense to you emotionally. So that was a choice that was made in their physiology. Notice how I keep relating it back to Avatar every time.
Yeah, I kind of picked up on that. Well, speaking of the performances in your movie, they're captured very well, and obviously you've broken a lot of ground with your version of performance capture. But I read in the press notes that people had to wear special headgear and lots of equipment to act in your film. And as a director, I'm wondering how you kept the technology from sort of getting in the way of the performances.
Well, interestingly, my sort of intuitive sense before the fact would be that even, we tried to make the head rig as absolutely lightweight as possible and as comfortable for the actors as possible and all that, because I anticipated some, frustration and annoyance on the part of the actors, even though they sign up and they know they're doing this, that after a while they feel it intrudes on their process. And in fact, what I found was that they never really had a problem with it at all, because they were enjoying themselves so much. And then I had to think, all right, why are the actors enjoying themselves so much? Why are they loving this process? And I realized it was because it was pure acting. And most of film work for actors is sitting around waiting and then rehearsing the scene and getting the marks down so that the camera operator can operate the shot and not miss it, not miss the action, and get it in focus so the DP can light it. And the actors are just constantly these kind of flesh puppets that are moving around so that everybody else, all the other trades and crafts, can do their jobs. And then there's all this sort of waiting and fussing with, wardrobe and hair and makeup and wind machines and rain and cleaning up after the last take and all that bullshit. All of that was gone. There was none of it. So they were there to act, period. And I was there to work with them and none of the other stuff. You see what I mean?
Right.
So all the distractions were removed, and it was reduced to its essence. Of course, there were negatives associated with that, which is that, we had to, if they were physically interacting with anything like plants or vines or doorways or whatever it was, we had to create all that and create a plausible sense of that interaction. But really, people have said, well, the actors didn't really have a set; they didn't have any environment around them. But if you've ever been on a movie set, you know that when you're in a setup, the actor's usually surrounded by cameras, dollies, bounce cards, flags, C-stands, and lights, and that somewhere out there is a set, but they can't really see it,
Right.
So it really doesn't matter to them. They act to each other. They get their fuel for a given moment from the eyes of the person in front of them that they're playing to. And that's how it works,
Right, right.
So in a funny way, it just boiled the whole process down to its essence. And you can ask any of them; they love the process. I'm not even sure they can articulate exactly why, but they did love it, and they're all looking forward to doing it again if we make another picture, which we will if we make some money.
Right. Well, you've shot in some of the most difficult environments imaginable. I read in The Futurist, the book about you, that you almost drowned while shooting The Abyss.
Yeah.
And obviously Titanic was no walk in the park either. How did shooting Avatar compare to those experiences? What were some parts that were easier and what were some parts that were more difficult?
I think the difficulty factor was just the length of the project, the complexity of the project. I don't think there were the danger factors that we would have had on The Abyss or even on some of the deep dive, documentaries. I wasn't flying around in helicopters and, sort of risking my life left and right. So it wasn't that sort of thing. It was really just maintaining a focus on the story, the narrative, and the characters, while all of these technical processes are going on over such a long period of time. I didn't have to keep the actors' enthusiasm up. They were gung-ho from beginning to end, even though it was a fairly long process. But, they were also, Zoe went off and did Star Trek and then came back and we worked with her some more. And, Sam went off and did Terminator Salvation and then, he came back and we worked with him some more. And so it was almost like this kind of haven that they got to come back to after they were off working on something else.
in general, this obviously has taken a long time to complete this project. Now that you've finished it, how do you feel about directing in the studio system? Does this mean we'll be seeing a new Cameron movie every few years now, or is it going to be an equally long wait?
No, it's going to be a long wait. I'll probably, take a little downtime, and then I've got an expedition project, but we're not going to be ready to do that for about another 9 to 10 months. So I'll probably get into pre-production on whatever the next film is and get that going, then run off and do the expedition. This is sort of my rough game plan. And then come back and shoot that film, meaning shoot the film that we've been prepping.
Are you talking about Battle Angel Alita?
That's one of the ones that's in contention, but I haven't made a decision yet.
Got it. And any hints about this expedition that you're taking?
Yeah, we're building a vehicle for ultra deep exploration right now down in Australia.
Got it.
So we'll be exploring some of the deepest recesses of the ocean, going much deeper than people have gone previously.
Very cool. Well, James Cameron, you have a lot of fans at slashfilm.com, and we wish you the best of luck with your movie, and thanks so much for speaking with me today.
No problem. It's good talking to you, David.